Ladies and gentlemen, your eyes and ears do not deceive you. The Inside Sports Podcast is back for Season 3. It's Episode 1, and of course, folks, can't even start the podcast without mentioning that the DE is capitalized. And I am joined by two new friends of mine here today, taking over for our beloved Joey and Cole, who you will not see anymore. To my left, let's start with the man from Fisher, Illinois, home of the Bunnies, Ryan Grieser. Tell the folks at home a little bit about yourself.
Yes, sir. So what's up, people at home? Jordan is right. I am from Fisher. I am a bunny, however unfortunate that may be.
I am a bunny. That's a line.
Yeah, that's really a line. I hope that doesn't become a soundbite out of this. But, you know, I am a bunny. I'm a junior at SIU, and I'm currently studying journalism, sports media. I work for both the DE and at the athletics department. I'm a video intern, and I also am the president of the water ski club.
And I think the question that folks at home are going to ask themselves immediately is, what's your favorite NFL team?
My favorite NFL team, following in the path of the great Joey Bernard, is the Green Bay Packers.
We couldn't get rid of the Packers, unfortunately. Now, on the other side of Ryan Grieser, we have a non-NFC North NFL fan. It's Howard Woodard. He's also got a crappy baseball team. We'll get to that later. Howard, take it away.
How we doing, people? Howard Woodard. I'm a senior at SIU. As Joey said, crappy baseball team in his point of view, but I'm from St. Louis. Like I said, I'm a senior feature story writer for athletics, majoring in journalism, specializing in sports media. So I think we hit the nail on the head as two people who can take over for Joey and Cole.
Definitely, and we want to wish them all the luck. I will say, just a quick peek behind the curtain for the people as to where they are. Joey's in St. Louis now. Working at news stations or whatever. He's enjoying his life away from school, which I kind of envy that, honestly. And then Cole will be halfway across the world for most of this semester. He will be in Italy starting in, I believe, the second week of September. He could probably tell you better than I could, but we wish both of them luck. But it's a new era, boys. It's a new era, and why don't we start it off by talking about some Saluki sports. Let's start with football. Okay, it's the one everyone in the area cares about. Everyone's going to be at these games. It's going to be an incredible year. And Howard, I know you've done a little bit of extra work on this team, so tell us a little bit about this 2024 Saluki football squad.
Well, after last season, I think it was encouraging in a lot of different ways. The defense, you could put it up as the best in history, program history, in terms of how well they performed. They were voted fourth in this year's preseason poll, but this season they only having 10 starters return. That's 6 on offense and 4 on defense. They lost a lot of pieces, especially on the defensive side of the ball. But of course, no more Nick Baker behind center. There's no more PJ Jules. There's no more Dune Smith, DJ Johnson, Mark Davis. So a lot of people in that secondary. You also lost a good amount of people up front, such as Cam Baldry, Tim Varga. And I think there was a defense that you could look at and you could say this could really go deep in the playoffs, and they didn't. And a lot of belief was because of the offensive struggles they had. So I think there will be some regression on the defensive side of the ball, but I'm hoping for better results on the offense because we're getting a quarterback battle in terms of Hunter Simmons versus DJ Williams, but we believe it will be DJ Williams. So hopefully the offense is smoother running this season.
You have that on good authority. That's going to be DJ Williams.
That's my prediction, I guess we can say.
Okay.
But what do you guys think in terms of, I guess, the defense being so different this year and also the offense hopefully being better?
I mean, I think we're definitely going to see regression on the defense, but that's not a bad thing. When it's the best defense in program history, it is so incredibly hard to follow that up. And with all the absences and transfers and graduations like you mentioned, another one that you didn't say was Branson Combs, who's now at Wake Forest. He was an outstanding linebacker. Now, I feel really good about our linebacker core this year. We have Ben Bogle, Shug Walker. He's a transfer from Murray State, came over with DJ Williams, actually. And then Colin Bohannock. Like, those three guys, I really think can lock down the linebacker positions. The defensive line is going to be really young, and I'm really excited about that. I've heard Elijah Gunn is turning some heads, Amir Dwight. Like, they're both young guys. They were redshirt freshmen last year, so we didn't see much of them. But I think that we should rightfully be excited about where they're going to go.
Definitely so. We were ranked number 10, right, in the FCS preseason top 25.
That's correct, yeah.
Yeah, and so, ending last season 8-5, it felt like we had a better record than we did. That team, again, with their defense, it was pretty incredible to watch, and obviously that brutal loss to Idaho to end the season. If you watched last year's pod, you know how disheveled we were the week after. So looking forward to this week. August 31st, Saturday night, against BYU, who not a great Power 5 team, or Power 4 now, I guess, team. And my hopes are high, and that's why I'm a little bit more nervous, because I think we may go into this game underestimating BYU. But I don't know, man. I think there's a good shot we win this game. What do you guys think?
I'm hoping for a win. Like I said, I feel like as a sports fan, there's uncertainty when you don't know. Obviously, you have that optimism because you don't know. You're not sure on what's to come. But I'm also pretty optimistic because, like I said, the offense hopefully is better. I got a couple stats for the defense last year. As good as they were tied for last in the FCS in third down conversion rate. So, and it didn't really feel like that. It didn't feel like that as they were that bad getting off the field. But as good as they were, they didn't get off the field, but at a great rate. But like I said, I mean, I'm hoping for a win. I'm not sure like you, Jay Kruse, but hopefully they can pull it out.
I think if they can get a win here, this would go into the SIU history books because this would be their third consecutive win over an FBS school.
Yeah,
that has not been done in program history. The record right now is 2. It was in 2006, 2007, and then actually 22 and 23 with beating Northwestern and Northern Illinois.
Right. Yeah, that would be huge, and I'm looking forward to watching this game. College football. We'll get to the national landscape here later in the show. We have a lot to talk about on that front. Let's move on to the next SIU sport. Next fall sport that we have is volleyball. And for those who don't know, should I say what I do, or is that too far?
I think you can.
Okay, so I work for the volleyball team. I'm their media guy. Let's just put it like that. We won't get into official titles or anything. They just had an exhibition game at St. Louis this past weekend. Probably didn't go the way they wanted it to, although in talking with some of them today, they weren't really pent up about a 3-0 sweep. They just wanted to get a feel kind of for their team. And I'm a little bullish on this team. I won't lie. I'm a little bullish. They were 5th in the preseason poll in the conference. I think it could be higher. Now, heading into this weekend, we go down to Alabama A&M's tournament, which weirdly, we don't play Alabama A&M. Mm-hmm. That's kind of, I don't know, I've never really seen where you go somewhere and don't end up playing
really
that
weird.
team. Yeah. And it kind of sucks that we don't play them because, no offense to the great people in Alabama A&M, but they're kind of easy to beat every single year. So I think there's one less almost automatic win that we'll get. But we got Chattanooga on Friday, Idaho on Saturday, and then Oral Roberts on Sunday. Now here's the thing. SIU volleyball has, I don't know if they've peaked yet. I hope they haven't peaked yet. But they've had a pretty good last couple of seasons. The two names on the outside that pretty much everyone knows about, Natalie Garcia and Tatum Tornada, are both gone now. But I personally don't think we're going to miss them as much as you might think. I don't think them being gone is going to impact the team as much. I'm really, really confident in Kelly Franklin and Annabelle Sulish on the outside. And I think over the years you've seen their energy once they get on the floor. There's not much of a drop-off from Natalie and Tatum. And again, this isn't disrespect to them. Obviously, they were fantastic. Brought this program back from the ashes, quite literally almost. But I don't think we're going to miss them as much as you might think. I also think with Anna Jaworski and Emma Sturmenska back as the setters, they were both fantastic last year. They were both in the top, I believe, 12 in terms of total assists and assists per set. That's perfect. I mean, their tag team is fantastic. So there are a couple other key newcomers too. Larissa Seeger, big middle hitter. That middle hitter position has plagued this team for a long, long time, and they haven't been able to find any consistency. You would see stretches from Maggie Wallenberger and Brindley Burdett that would make you excited about that, but they just really couldn't pull it together all at once. And then Jillian Schoenfeld as well, coming in as the libero. I think she's going to give Cece Bullman the opportunity to go back outside. So what do you guys think?
I think just watching them, it was interesting to hear your take on Tornada and Garcia leaving, because just watching them, it was so like powerful to watch them go up and just end a set just like that. I mean, so it's interesting also how you're watching them close and you see their practices and you notice it, and I feel like you almost expect more because you're watching them on a daily basis versus the people on the outside who haven't really got to see the team come together yet. So I'm hoping they'll be all right. But like you said, I mean, Jaworski and Sturminska in the middle, I mean, setting, they're great. Jaworski has over 3,000 assists in her career going into her senior year. So confident in the team, confident in what they can do, because last year was a great year altogether. But hopefully with those losses, they don't take too much of a step back or even improve.
And Ed Allen got his 700th win last year, right? I think you could speak to this. It's crazy that we have him on our coaching staff, given how much he's done for a lot of programs across the country, and then having him on a team with a lot of potential, I think is really encouraging.
It completely is. I mean, if you look at Ed Allen's coaching record, you can find it, like, go into the volleyball record book, and you look at the programs he's rebuilt. I mean, SIU, they were actually pretty good before he got here, and then they really fell during his first few years. But then, slowly but surely, I think he's entering his 6th or 7th year here as the coach.
6th year, yeah.
So, yeah, his 6th year, they just won 20 games last year. Like, this is a program that's on the rise. I think we can really, really be excited about where they're going. Annabelle Sulish, Jordan, correct me if I'm wrong, she was on an All-MVC team last year, was she not?
She was not. Emma Sturmeska, the setter, was, but Sulish wasn't. But I could definitely see her getting there toward the end of this season, whether it's the first or second team. I mean, I described her, and this is very redundant of me, but I keep describing her as an energy bug because that's just what she is. It seemed like every time she came in last year, boom, the place just explodes. And she's a very powerful outside hitter. So, yeah, I would definitely expect a lot from her this year, and I think she's definitely a name that we're going to be bringing up a lot on this podcast.
And I think talking about that middle hitter position, like, it's just been kind of inconsistent. I talked to Coach Allen this week, and he's really, really excited what Larissa Seeger's bringing to the table. I mean, he's even mentioned, like, playing through the middle more. Yeah. Like, not just, I mean, so often it was, and for good reason, they were fantastic players, Tatum and Natalie, finishing a possession. We didn't get much defense. We didn't get much offense out of that middle hitter position. Yeah. Seeger, she really, really brings potential to that spot for both offense and defense.
Yeah, and we did have, this is another name I definitely need to mention, Imani Hartfield was here last year. Yeah. She was great, and don't get me wrong, I think there was just, again, we talked about the consistency thing, and with him trying to mix and match with size, I mean, Imani Hartfield was a middle hitter, but she was only 5'9". And really, and you just break it down, volleyball is kind of a sport where height matters, and it matters a lot, more than others, and you're not really able to make up for that at times. So if Larissa Seeger is as good as advertised, and she was really, really good at Santa Fe College, then sky's the limit for this team, really. I think they're going to be pretty special. Finally, the women's soccer team. Now, don't look now. They're undefeated as of this recording, 2-0-2. I mean, we'll take what we can get, right?
We have to take what we can get. I mean, this is the best start for SIU women's soccer in their program history. And now this might be saying something about the history of their program, but they also have surpassed their win total for 3 seasons already, and they've only played 4 games. The 2 teams that they did have a draw against, one was UT Martin. That is not a bad school at all. Like, UT Martin is a very formidable opponent, and so is Jackson State. Like, those are not bad teams that we tied. We just came off of a 3-1 win over Indiana University of Indianapolis here in Carbondale. Players are really excited coming out of this weekend, and they feel really good. They're going to be playing Kansas City this Thursday, 8:29 for people if we post this later. Sorry. But we'll see how that game goes. Now, this is Graham Orr's first, really his recruiting class. For people that don't know, Coach Orr was hired in late May of 2023. So he did not get to really bring in his own recruiting class. He has his own now. There are 19 new players on this roster, and there's only 14 that returned. I mean, we're looking at 7 sophomores, 4 grad students, 1 junior, and 2 seniors that returned. This is a really, really veteran-heavy team. I mean, looking at how many grad students they have, there's, I believe, a total of 9 on the roster. And also, he's playing his old players. I mean, you look at their minutes, 8 people are new this season, and 8 of those people also, 8 of the top 14 people are 5th-year players. He's playing his old players, and that's okay. I mean, for a team that has not won very many games, you got to take the wins wherever you can get them. And I think we should be a lot more excited about soccer this season than we've been in a lot of past years.
Yeah, Ryan, I love that you added context to Coach Orr's history, I guess, since he got here, because I think looking from the outside in, people see just the 1 win last year. Oh, they hired a coach and he's bad too, I guess. And it's a thing where coaches need time to implement who they want to play, actually, and then also their system they want to bring in. And I think it's coming into fruition now because soccer, I mean, there's just a different energy around the team, I think you could say. But when you have a coach and you give him time to implement, I think we're going to even see that with basketball, even though it's not basketball season, where there'll probably be some struggles, some growing pains, but you need to give a coach time to implement because there's a whole new roster. He's facing new competition, and the players have to learn his system. So I think with Coach Orr in women's soccer, you're seeing that fruition of the team coming together, buying in, and really building on it.
Yeah, and like you said, with the continuity of the coaching staff, that means a lot for this program.
Mm-hmm.
It's been a tumultuous last 3-4 years, really, and considering that the program didn't even become a thing until 2019, and they have all the scandal and stuff. I mean, it's just unbelievable, the perseverance of a player like Mackenzie Bunch, who, don't want to spoil anything, may or may not be appearing on this podcast. Maybe this episode, maybe next episode, who's to say? But no, it's really encouraging to see, and I'm really, really excited about this team, and I think everyone else should be as well. So with all that being said, you guys know what time it is. It's everyone's favorite part of the podcast. It's the Told You So segment. It's time for the Told You So segment. There's going to be a lot of arguments during this segment throughout the year, especially as the football season starts and as the Major League Baseball playoffs roll around. It's going to be an interesting time for sure, but I'm glad to have these two guys here to give. This is where we really just give our opinions, right? This is basically just the monologue segment from all three of us. We all have it at some point. And so we're going to start with college football. Now, week 0 has come and gone. I don't know how many people, like, if you're a diehard like me, you love it. If you just consider yourself a college football fan, I'm not sure how many people really take it all that seriously. But with that being said, the game that just occurred this last weekend, Florida State and Georgia Tech. I'm going to let you guys go first because I have a lot to say. So I'm going to let one of you guys lead us off here just with some quick thoughts on that game.
Well, I'm a casual fan, as you kind of described, but I mean, I was watching the game, and it was more of like a no way they get upset right now. Like, no way. After all that happened last year with just everything that compiled and losing in Ireland. So, I mean, it kind of adds fuel to the fire, but definitely an upset that I don't think a lot of people were expecting to Georgia Tech, but, I mean, Jay Kruse will get into it, but, I mean, that's so headlines. Week 0, stealing headlines like that, I mean, that's big stuff.
I think if you're Florida State, how can you let this happen to start your season? Like, all of your fans are going nuts for the last however many months that you guys didn't make the college football playoff, which, while warranted, as Nick Saban said, they probably should have made it just based on their season, but Alabama was the better team at the time. I don't have an issue with that. I like quality football. Alabama gave us a good game. So, like, I don't have an issue with FSU missing out. It's really unfortunate for their fans. If I were a fan, I would be in the same boat. I'd be really upset. But as a team and as a coaching staff, coming out and losing to Georgia Tech in Ireland, that is just the biggest possible letdown that you could give your fans. Like, they've already been having a terrible few months just thinking about dwelling on imagining the college football playoff and what would have happened. And then you come out and just give this nightmare of a loss to start your year. Like, I'm really interested to see, honestly, how Florida State recovers from this.
Doesn't it seem like this always happens with a team that, like, felt they were jobbed at the end of a season? They come back and they never really get to where they were supposed to, right? Doesn't it seem like it always happens in sports? Like, nobody really executes a revenge tour, right? They normally come up short. Normally when teams break through, it kind of just comes out of the blue. Am I crazy for that, or is that...
I think you're right. I think you're kind of spot on. I mean, we're getting your quarterback injured and then just not making it and then getting all this riled up. It kind of, I guess you feel like you might be better than you are. You get these false expectations, and just going into this season, I mean, I feel like the team has to respond better than that. I mean, you can't go over there and lose like that after all that happened last year. So,
are you guys fully aware of the firestorm that was Florida State social media over the last 8 months? Because I'm not just talking about the fact that they got left out of the playoff. It went so much deeper than that, and their fans were talking about ESPN hates us and Kirk Herbstreit hates us. That man got death threats from Florida State fans just because he agreed with basically what Ryan said. Maybe Ryan's about to start getting death threats too from Florida State people saying that it's okay that they didn't make it in because their quarterback got hurt, right?
Yeah.
And they weren't going to be the same, and they had shown that. But man, these people were psychos all off season long, and to come out like that, and Georgia Tech bullied them on the ground. Unbelievable. Florida State rushed for 98 yards in that game. 60 of them came on the first drive.
Bully ball.
That's bully ball. That's the definition of bully ball. And Georgia Tech, That result was the last thing that I saw coming. And it's funny. I texted our guy Cole before the game. It was actually on the Monday before. And I'm like, dude, I got to be honest with you. I feel like Georgia Tech's got better skill position players than Florida State does. Because I was basically just looking at rosters like, I don't know who that is. Right? And it proved to be true. It was the complete opposite of how I thought that game was going to go. And I'm happy for the Georgia Tech people. But, man, Florida State, I don't know. Fortunately for them, they're going to have some time to make up for it. Yeah. And now we have an expanded playoff. And so I'm going to get into some of my predictions here. I'm actually going to lay it out for you guys. But real quick for you two guys, the 12-team playoff for college football, does that add any more excitement for you guys? Or is that just one thing that's like, it doesn't really matter because Georgia's going to win it regardless, or Ohio State's going to win it regardless. What is your feeling on the 12-team playoff? Did you even like the 14 playoff? Were you just okay with the BCS system? What's kind of been your evolution of thinking about the college football playoff?
To me, I was okay with the BCS system. I mean, I am much more of a pro football fan than a college one, but the BCS system, it wasn't bad. I think as time went on and more programs got better. In the early 2000s, and it worked perfectly because there just weren't that many awesome teams in college football. Now with the rise of NIL, super teams, people grouping up together, and just there's so many more good players now. I mean, I don't know if you could say that about 15 years ago, but the number of legitimate stars that you can just go down the list and he's a star. He is. And that's on one roster. Having 12 teams in that playoff, not only does it make more money for the companies that are advertising, it makes more money for the players. They get more chances at NIL deals, which I am fully in support of. I mean, why would we limit how much they can earn? They're working. This is a full-time job for them as well as school. So, I have no issue at all with them profiting from a 12-team playoff.
Like I said, I'm a casual college football fan, but just looking from the outside in, I always kind of wondered why there was only 4 teams in the playoff. So going to 12 teams, I think, is good because you don't necessarily have a situation like last year with FSU where, if they won't get snubbed most likely, and then when they do get in, you lost your quarterback, you'll probably lose anyway, but at least you had a chance with that team to compete to win the Natty. But I think it's good. You look at something like the NFL where there's a lot more teams. Usually the top dog still wins, but like you said, Ryan, the talent is so much more spread out. There's not all the dogs are at Alabama and Georgia, and it's just basically over from there. That we know what the Natty will be. It's a lot more parity. We had TCU in it 2 years ago. It's going to be a lot of fun, especially down the stretch, because there was just a lot of bowl games where okay, where do they go after this one? Oh, their season's over after this. Oh, well, I guess we have more reason to watch those teams now.
Definitely so. It definitely gives teams 10 through 20 in the rankings a lot more reason to care throughout the rest of the season. And I always think that's good. That's good for the sport. Mm-hmm. So with that all being said, I have some more thoughts, but why don't we just go through the predictions? And if at any point you guys think I'm crazy or you want to stop me, just interrupt me in the middle of a sentence, and then I'll let you butt in here because I'm going to get on a little bit of a roll here. But we got 1 through 12. Here's how it's going to go, folks. Your Ohio State Buckeyes, my Ohio State Buckeyes, the Ohio State Buckeyes are going to be your number 1 team when it comes playoff time. I actually think they'll lose to Oregon in mid-October, which is game of the year stuff right there. That's a ridiculously awesome game. But I do think they'll come back and beat them in the Big Ten Championship, secure the 1 seed. I think the Georgia Bulldogs, again, this is going to be very chalky, but forgive me if 9 of the last 10 national champions in college football were ranked in the top 5 at the beginning of the season. Mm-hmm. So really, if you're one of these people who tries to say Utah's going to win it all, I'm just sorry. That's not going to happen. Sorry, I wish it could. It's just not going to. College football is chalk. It is so chalky. Number 3, I'm going to go Kansas State. And this is interesting. Now, if you guys aren't aware, the top 4 seeds are conference champions. It has to be conference champions, right? I think Kansas State's going to be at 3, and it really just comes down to the schedule game. In their conference, I thought it was either going to be them, Oklahoma State, or the aforementioned Utah Utes. And it just came out that Kansas State had an easier schedule, really. I'm not really biased toward any one of those 3 teams. I think they're all pretty evenly matched. So that's where I landed. Them at 3, and then number 4. And now I had this down before Florida State lost. to Georgia Tech. The U is back. The U is fully back. The Miami Hurricanes are going to win the ACC and be the number 4 seed in the college football playoff. Any problem with top 4 right there before we get into 5 through 12?
I have a problem with the system. So, to me, K-State is not the 3rd best team in the country.
No.
There's no way. And I do understand.
And they're not saying they're the 3rd best team in the country.
I get that. I just don't like how this system is set up, because if K-State is coming in as the 3 seed, they could easily play, say, Oregon or something. If they lose 2 games, they can get pushed down the rankings. They'll probably still make it, be in the top 12, but then they're just going to probably come in. They won't roll K-State, but it's not going to be that great of a game. I don't like that conference champs get that high of a bid automatically.
I mean, you can parallel it to the NFL, right? I mean, you got a NFC South. We know how bad the NFC South is. They won a division and they're the 4 seed, but you know, we know they're not good. They'll probably get smacked by a wildcard team, which has been the case. So, I mean, I think it's fair, especially when you have the conferences sectioned out as you do. I think it's fair in that aspect, and they will get a chance to play those teams. So, at the end, you'll see who is the better team. But I'm not too down on that part, because I mean, you win your conference, you deserve some respect in that aspect.
And I think, yeah, obviously K-State's not the 3rd best team. Would they really deserve a bye? No, but one thing I am a fan of is taking a little bit of subjectivity out of the rankings, because that's all the 4 team was. It wasn't a playoff. It was an invitational.
Yeah.
It was, hey, you can play them, you can play, like, it was all hand-picked, right? Well, this is a little bit more of a objective system. Yes, there we go. All right, 5 through 12, and this is where it got really hairy. I kind of just put teams in there and then made some slight adjustments. I put Oregon at 5. Again, I do think they're going to beat Ohio State in the regular season and then lose to them in the Big Ten championship, but I do think they'll be the best non-conference champion. So I got them at 5. I got Texas at 6. I think they're going to end up losing to Georgia in the SEC championship, which is another rematch. We'll get to the rematch thing later, because I think that's one of the things that people have been talking about with this system as well. Ole Miss at 7. Have you all seen their roster? It is loaded. If they don't win 10 games this year with that roster, Lane Kiffin needs to be fired. He's just not a good coach. Ole Miss is set up for success. I think they could definitely end up in the SEC championship game just as easily as Texas could. At number 8, I've got Penn State. Now, 5 through 8 gets games at home for the playoff. Remember, these are campus site games. Could you imagine Penn State in a playoff game at home? And you know what's even better? Because if this works out, what I have predicted here works out, Penn State's going to have a home playoff game against who?
Yeah. Who plays the 8 seed?
The 9 seed.
Alabama.
Could you imagine Penn State and Alabama? 2 classic uniforms.
Wow.
Hopefully under the lights. I would hope they do this game at night.
For sure.
Oh my goodness. Then I got 10 at Notre Dame. Notre Dame at 10. Look, I don't like Notre Dame. A lot of people do. They have a huge fan base. And this year their schedule is so easy to where if they don't go 11-1, I doubt they're going to make it in, honestly, with how easy their schedule is. And normally Notre Dame fans complain that people make fun of their easy schedule. And normally it's not this easy. Their hardest game heading into the season looked like it was going to be Florida State at home. Well, we've already talked a little bit about Florida State. Maybe that game won't be as hard as I think. So if that's your best win, man, I don't know. They need to go. Sorry, they need to go at least 11-1. So that's why I have them at 10. Now here's where this was the hardest part for me. Number 11, because I think the top 10. I would almost guarantee that the top 10 ends up being those 10 teams outside of maybe Kansas State and Miami. But what order, I have no idea. Number 11 was where I just threw a dart at the board and was like, okay, what team do we have here? And because, and now I'm not going to sound like a Florida State fan, but because it is ESPN, because they have the SEC on their network now, I wouldn't be shocked if the committee ends up giving the nod to Missouri to get another SEC team in there at 11. And I do, honestly, I do think they would deserve it, because if they get the wins I think they should get, they'll have a pretty good resume, and I think they would be pretty competitive in this kind of a playoff. So I got Missouri at 11, and then for the 12th seed, a group of 5 team, which I don't like that a group of 5 team gets an automatic bid into the playoff. I don't think it's fair to even say that they're playing the same sport as the Power 4 teams. It's not the same sport, really, at all. I put Boise State there because I think they'll end up being the best Power 4, group of, I guess it's group of 6 now, not group of 5.
Mm-hmm.
I guess the Pac-12 is part of their group of 6. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think they'll end up being the best team, but I honestly, the team I wouldn't be shocked if they made it would be Liberty, because they have I believe they have the 134th ranked schedule, which out of 134 teams, that means they have the easiest schedule in the world. If they run the table and no other group of 6 team does, it's going to be hard to keep them out. So, but I do think Boise State's better, so that's why I put them in there. Okay, are we cool with all that?
I'm cool with that. I'm going to go down the list and just give a few of my thoughts here.
Sure.
So, Ole Miss, fun fact, Isaiah Hartrip, former Saluki receiver, he transferred to Ole Miss.
For their football team or like for school?
For football, I believe.
What?
Yeah.
That's crazy. I didn't even know that.
Yeah. I did not know that.
No disrespect, but like, wow.
Yeah.
He was our leading receiver last year, but still he's going from a mid-major up to a big-time FBS program. So good for him. Penn State, I will just always have a hard time thinking about Penn State because my mind goes back to when they played Illinois, I think it was 4 years ago, with the new overtime rules.
Yep. Oh, that game was brutal.
Yeah. How many overtimes was that? I mean...
9, I think?
Yeah, it was something like that. It was 9.
It was
9 overtimes. And you lose to Illinois on a big stage, nationally televised game. I will just always come back to that moment. Should I? No. But I can just never trust Penn State ever again after that.
I'm noticing Missouri. I am buying Missouri stock. I mean, a kind of breakout
As you should.
season. Yeah, of course. As a kind of a breakout season last year, and that receiving core just really stand out. So I mean,
ridiculous.
It's going to be interesting how I guess those outside those top 10 who's going to fight to get in there. So
yeah, the other teams I was considering were Missouri, Michigan. I hate to say it, but I actually think their over/under win total was 9.5 all summer, and then it went down to 8.5. I don't know why.
Mm-hmm.
Couldn't tell you why. Maybe the people were hearing some stuff out of camp that wasn't so good. 9-3 is what everyone's predicting for Michigan this year. I just think they're going to be closer to 10-2 than they are 8-4.
Mm-hmm.
I think they have a better chance at beating Texas or beating Oregon or Ohio State than they do losing to Washington or because they had to strip down their whole program basically, or losing to another team on their schedule. So they were also in consideration, but I think 9-3 is about where they have, and I had Missouri at 10-2. So that was about where the delineation came there.
I'm interested in the impact of losing Jim Harbaugh comes into Michigan because
and Connor Stallions.
That as well. I mean they I mean they're
for those who forgot, Michigan cheated.
Yes, they did. But I feel like his impact and his energy, his culture that he brings in terms of running the football and being physical. I mean, you saw how it worked last year. So I mean, interesting how fall they play, how Shamar Moore does with the team.
So with that being said, let me get into the quick predictions, and then we'll move on. I think Oregon is going to beat Boise State. I actually think Missouri is going to beat Texas if they play in the playoff game, 6 versus 11. Again, those receivers, dude. Those receivers. Yeah. Luther Burden, Theo Weiss, and Mookie Cooper. Mm-hmm. That's a ridiculous receiving core. Yeah. I think Ole Miss is going to beat Notre Dame. Again, that's another great spot for a playoff game is at Ole Miss. And then Penn State, Bama. To me, that's a coin flip. I'm going to go Bama. Barely. I mean, barely.
Bama, no Saban?
Bama, no Saban. You know what? I'm going to go Penn State.
They will be home, so.
It will be at home. I think Penn State's going to be good. Their schedule, another reason they're here, Ryan, is because their schedule is pretty soft. A lot of this was schedule game that I played. Their only really tough game is Ohio State, and they get that at home. And then their next toughest game is at USC, and who knows if Lincoln Riley will even want to coach defense this year. So that's sort of the way that I see it. Yeah. Next round, Ohio State versus Penn State. You already know where I'm going there, Ohio State. Georgia, barely over Ole Miss. And I mean barely, because, again, I'm super high on this Ole Miss team. These two teams play in the regular season in Mississippi. That'll be an interesting one to watch. And I don't know how much impact that'll have on a potential rematch, but it's going to be cool. Kansas State versus Missouri, who's number 11. Folks, the Missouri Tigers are going to be in the Final Four this year. I'm so glad that you said you're buying them because I'm right there with you. I think Missouri Tigers are going to beat Kansas State. It's an old Big 12 matchup as well.
Yep.
And they're going to move on to the Final Four. Well, they will play against the Oregon Ducks. Or no, so they won't play against Oregon, but Oregon is going to end up beating Miami, I think, as well in that final quarterfinal matchup. So we got our Final Four. And unfortunately, we have a game that will, in my opinion, happen 3 times this season. Ohio State and Oregon. So this is the part where I wanted to open another discussion because a lot of people who are anti-playoff hate the fact that we might see some matchups 2, potentially 3 times. Does that ruin it for you guys? Because I know we see it in the NFL, but it's college football. You don't want it to feel like the NFL. That's kind of why it's special. Am I crazy for saying that?
I don't think you are. I mean, I understand why people don't want to see it because you don't want it to be ruined, I guess, in a sense, on a higher stage. I mean, for example, if Ohio State whoops Oregon 2 times throughout the season, the people won't really be as revved up for that last game as they would. But I mean, I think I would only like to see it a couple times, like 2 max. I don't think I want to see it that 3rd time in this situation.
I honestly would be really excited to see a 3rd. So you always hear the phrase, it's so hard to beat a team 3 times in a year. Yeah. So now, if we're talking Ohio State, they beat Oregon twice. Oregon, they are just foaming at the mouth. They want to play Ohio State so bad, and they want to beat them.
Yeah.
I would really, really like to see that. Now, is Ohio State a better team? Absolutely. I don't doubt that at all. As much as it pains me to say it, I think they rightfully are the preseason pick for national champions. I don't have an issue with that. I think that they are the team to beat. But I think Oregon could give them a heck of a run if they play them 3 times.
As an Ohio State fan, and you whoop Oregon twice, and you do match up in the playoff, how are you feeling knowing that they're hungry to beat you?
See, okay, here's the thing. In my scenario, the team split the first 2 games.
Okay.
That would make me really excited for a 3rd game because then at the end of the season, one of those teams can come out on top, virtually, right, winning 2 out of the 3. But if Ohio State were to win the first 2 games and then we got to play them again, it is kind of like, all right, we've proven we can beat these dudes already. Like they don't deserve another chance to play us. I don't see, now here's the thing, I don't see that scenario being possible. I highly doubt that if Oregon loses to us twice, that they'll be good enough to even make the playoff, honestly, at that point. Because I think if they're bad enough to lose to us twice, because, again, Oregon, playing the schedule game again, they play us at home. Then they got to go to Michigan as well this season. So, I don't know. Maybe that could happen. And if it does, I guess I'll just think about it when the game comes, if they do play each other a 3rd time in the playoff. So, with that being said, this 3rd time they're going to play each other, I think Ohio State's going to beat them. Take 2 out of 3 in the season series. And I do think Georgia would beat Missouri. And in another great matchup. I think it would be, and Missouri gave them a lot of hell last year.
Yeah, they did,
in Georgia. And so, but unfortunately, I do think it would be Ohio State, Georgia, number 1, number 2 for the national championship. And I got to go with Ohio State. I mean, and really, this is one of the few years where I've ever done that. I never predict Ohio State to win it all. Do I think they can win every game? Yes, but obviously they're, especially with all those Bama teams, with when Clemson was rolling, and now Georgia is basically the top dog, no pun intended, of the sport. I just think this Ohio State team is the best I've ever seen on paper, with everybody that they got to come back, and then you add Quinshon Judkins, who is absolutely broken in the new video game, and then you get Caleb Downs as well, who, Travis Hunter might be the best overall player in the country. Caleb Downs is right there with him, and he's going to be a guy, probably surefire top 10 pick in the NFL draft. I don't think that's too crazy to say.
I don't think the draft is too loaded to where he wouldn't make
exactly.
the top 10.
He may also play some offense this year. I heard too. He like a Jabril Peppers type, or like a Cooper DeJean type even. So it's going to be interesting. But I am going to pick my Buckeyes to win the national championship. I just think it has to be this year. It has to. So we're going to get into our top 3 games of the week that we will all predict, and let's get into game number 1. Week 1 of the college football season is finally here, folks. And the game to lead the entire nation off on ABC. I do want to give a shout out to ABC and ESPN for getting all 3 of the big games this week for week 1. They're going to dominate the headlines. Their first game, Clemson against Georgia. And it's basically at Georgia because the game is in Atlanta at the Mercedes-Benz Stadium. And I gave that a stat last year on the podcast. I think at the time it was like 6 of Georgia's last 9 neutral site games came at Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta.
That's insane.
That's not neutral site.
No,
That's
not at all.
basically a home game for them.
Yeah.
It's like 40 minutes down the road. And I think that's, personally, I'll lead us off here. I think that's going to play into this again. Clemson might give them a fight, but I'm going to take Georgia to lead off the season with a victory.
I don't like Clemson at all.
Oof.
Right there with you.
I would say sell, hammer the under on their win total this year. There's nothing to be excited about in Clemson. I mean, Dabo's still the coach. That's great. But they haven't been truly nationally relevant since Trevor Lawrence went to the NFL. Like, sure, they've had some guys on defense. They've had some first-round picks in the last few years. But Clemson, to me, is just a team that is riding on their reputation of being scary, being a team that nobody wants to play. And I think that we need to let go of that now. Like, Clemson, they're a good team. I don't think that they're not in the top 25, but they are not a team that I would be scared to play if I'm Georgia.
Not at all.
Yeah, I would agree. I think the luster of that program is a little gone, a little dried up, if you would. I mean, I have Georgia winning this game as well. I mean, that's a clean sweep, so there's not too much extra I got to add.
Game number 2. And honestly, this might be, I'm not going to say it's going to be the best environment because I do think the night game that we're going to talk about next will be the best environment. Mm-hmm. But in terms of a game where people might die from not only the heat, but also just getting beat up by each other, it's it's Miami, and it's Florida in Gainesville. There's no ocean air to come off and cool the place down. It's going to be hot. It's at 3:30 in the afternoon in the state of Florida still August, technically, August 31st. I'm going to let Howard start off on this one. This is a very, very tough game to predict. Miami is barely favored. And Florida, I mean, their head coach, Billy Napier, needs this one. I don't know if you guys have seen their schedule this year. Mm-hmm. Maybe the hardest schedule in the history of college football. So are they going to get the win they desperately need in week 1 to maybe add some padding for the whippings that are going to come to them later in the season?
You said they need it. It's going to be hot. It's going to be humid. And I think they're going to get it. Barely. I think I'm going to get them by 2 points. Like a game-winning field goal at the end or something like that.
Wow. That would be something.
I really believe in, like you said, the hard schedule. I mean, it plays into it to where you want to set the tone. You want to, okay, we can do this. We can overcome this challenge that's before us. I think they'll get it done.
I think it comes down to how good Florida's coach is. I mean, if Napier, I think is how you say his name. Napier. I'm sorry. To those,
it's not as French as it looks.
Yeah, to Florida fans out there, I apologize. I doubt there's any of you listening. But I'm going to go with Howard. I am going to take Florida to win this game because he knows that they have to win this. I mean, you think the players are stressing about this? They look at that schedule. For a coach, it is 100 times worse. I mean, he probably has not gotten a good night's sleep since his schedule came out because he's stressing about that. He knows that this is a must-win game. Having a must-win in week 1, that might be the worst way to start your season because you're just so stressed about winning that. And then if you don't win it, what happens? I mean, your season is just shot. You're going to snowball. I wouldn't say it's over, but for a team like Florida, it could be effectively over.
It's weird because he is recruiting better. And, I personally wouldn't fire him after this year because I think they just got a really bad draw with the schedule. It's probably going to be the reverse next year. Next year they'll probably have a really easy schedule the way that the schedules are coming out now. Did you give an official prediction, Ryan? By the way,
I did take Florida.
You did take Florida.
I did take Florida.
Okay.
I can't say the same thing as Howard, so I'm going to say it's by 3. I think they barely beat Miami because Miami is a good team.
And I'm actually going to go with Miami. They have, I think, the 5th most talented roster in football, but their head coach, Mario Cristobal, loves losing games in the worst of ways. I mean, I'm sure you all saw their game against Georgia Tech last season. I mean,
How about Georgia Tech?
how about Georgia Tech, man? They're on the up and up. Shout out Eric Singleton. Remember that name, by the way. He's gonna be an NFL receiver. No, man, it's now or never for him. I mean, it really is. I mean, again, it's one of those situations where he's not gonna get fired if they have a not great year, but the heat will be on for sure. And I am actually going to pick Miami to win this game. They got the transfer quarterback, Cam Ward, to come over from Washington State. What he did at Washington State was nothing short of spectacular. And so, give me Miami to beat Florida. But again, I'm not really saying that with a ton of confidence because I do think that place is going to be crazy. And it's going to be hot, like we've said a million times at this point. But so give me Miami barely. And then the final game. Played at the place where, according to College Football 25 video game, the number one toughest place to play in all of college football, which I just don't, I don't know where they're getting that from. I mean, it is a huge stadium. It's a loud stadium. It's a cult. The fan base is a cult, basically. You know you are if you're listening. Against the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, the Texas A&M Aggies actually think they're going to win the game. I think Texas A&M is going to win the game. And I can't give you any sort of analysis as to why. It's just a weird feeling I have, and that's all I got to say about it.
Jay Cruz, I was debating this when I was picking this game. I was like, is Texas A&M going to do it? I was debating it, and I'm right with you. I think they're going to upset. The thing is, I think it's either going to be a complete blowout by Notre Dame or Texas A&M will pull it out. Like just almost like I think Florida will Miami. So I'm also going with Texas A&M. Like I said, I think it's going to be another tight one, but that's what I got.
And again, you know what this means. If Notre Dame loses this game, like I said earlier, they don't have a lot of great teams left on their schedule. So again, this is a team that really, really needs it. But unlike Florida, they don't get it at home.
Yeah.
So that's a big deal. Grieser.
I got to take Notre Dame. I am by no means a Notre Dame fan, but, I mean, this is another, must win. You start your season with a must win. To me, this is what they've been preparing for all offseason, is they know that they have to beat Texas A&M. It has to get done.
Yeah.
So I think they do it. I honestly think it's going to be a lot less of a game than people think it is. I'm taking Notre Dame by at least 10. I would not be surprised if it's more. I really like Notre Dame. Their coach, I am really confident with what he's done. I mean, sure, they lost Brian Kelly a couple of years ago. He's been building LSU, whatever. Fine. They don't miss him.
Yeah.
Notre Dame does not miss him because what did he ever win for him?
Yeah. Nothing.
Exactly.
Nothing, really, they went to
Not a
one
thing.
championship game and got blasted
Exactly.
by Alabama.
So they don't miss their coach. They're really confident in who they have.
Yeah.
I think Notre Dame could be primed to have a good year. They're not going to win a natty. I wouldn't say ever win another natty, but I don't see it happening for them in my lifetime at least.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. So that's our week 1 predictions. It's going to be an unbelievable weekend of college football. So happy that it's back. All three of us took Georgia. You guys took Florida, right? Yeah.
Yep.
Ryan and Howard went with Florida. I took Miami, and then me and Howard went with A&M. Ryan reluctantly took Notre Dame to win that game. Just real quick before we move on, in terms of who's going to win the Heisman, that's another thing Cole always did. We talked about the Heisman. I have no freaking clue. I have no clue. I guess if you were to pick a guy in the top 5, 10-ish, I'd go Jackson Dart for Ole Miss, because now that Judkins is gone, I feel like he's going to have to do a lot more of the work for that offense, and I think that's going to lead to some pretty big numbers because they have a crap ton of weapons, even with Judkins gone. So I think he's going to have a big year. And then, back on the Mizzou train, we're really going to ride them hard this year on the Mizzou train. Luther Burden. I'm not saying he's going to win the Heisman, but he's one of these dudes that if you told me he did, I wouldn't be shocked at all. Yeah. He's that good. I honestly like him more than even as an NFL prospect, I like him more than Marvin Harrison even, which sounds crazy coming from me, but I just think he's a all-around incredible receiver. He reminds me a lot of Justin Jefferson. I know these are crazy statements. These are crazy
Dude,
statements, but
this is
if you haven't
blasphemy.
watched this man play, do yourself a favor because he's a stud.
I mean,
he really is a stud.
I think Justin Jefferson is the best receiver in the league, and I think Marv is probably the best receiver and prospect that we've gotten in several years. So I mean, it's pretty big praise. The first name that did come to my mind was Judkins, but I can see Burton winning it as well. I mean, when it comes to receivers and running backs, I mean that's who you look at. You look at the class to see, who has put together, the progress to put out that breakout year, and I think it's probably going to be one of those two guys.
For sure.
I definitely agree. So, typically we would go to NFL, right? The natural transition, college to NFL. Obviously, there's no NFL games this week, though. Ryan will take us through that when we do get there. We're bringing back State of the Team. We're bringing back we're going to change it up a little bit this year. We picked 3 games last year. We're just going to do the primetime games this year. I think that's just more natural, a lot easier way to do this with our predictions. And then we're also going to institute maybe a little fantasy football, buy, sell as part of our weekly thing, too. So can't wait to get into that. There's going to be a lot of fights with this year with that. All 3 of our teams, I think, are going to be relatively competitive.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a fun NFL season, and I can't wait to do that. But we will get to that next week. Now, let's talk about some stick and ball.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we got the baseball coming up. My favorite sport. I'm just gonna list off some standings, and then what I'm gonna do is when I get to, I guess, tight or closing leads and stuff like that, then I'll ask you guys what do you guys think is gonna unfold, just to start off. So we'll start off with the Central. I'm sure a lot of people are watching in who are fans of those teams. NL Central, Brewers up 10 games. I think that one's pretty much a done deal.
That's wraps.
The Braves are only 6 games back of the Phillies now. The Phillies are reeling a little bit, and the Braves somehow, some way, with all their injuries, are still doing the thing. So what do you guys think?
It makes me angry.
Yeah.
I think the Phillies are going to keep it. I think the Phillies are going to win the World Series. I'll just come right out and say that.
Yeah.
They should.
I can't wait till MLB playoffs come around because the predictions are going to be interesting. Because I think, and we'll get to this as you go throughout the standings, but the league has never been more competitively balanced, but it's a good competitive balance. Talking about college football, the Big 12, like the Big 12 conference is like a bunch of mid teams, right? Like we talked about how Kansas State, they're not the 3rd best team. But in Major League Baseball, there's some good teams, and they're very evenly spread out throughout the sport.
I love you guys said because I picked the Phillies preseason to win it, and like you said,
look at you.
I mean the league is just so, the parity is the best it's been in years.
Oh yeah,
I mean there's
definitely.
So next we got the NL West, where the Dodgers are up 3 games on the Snakes, and the Padres are only 4.5 back. What do we got?
Which I will say, the Padres and Diamondbacks were closing in very, very quickly, but the Dodgers have started winning a little bit lately. So for now, they've kept them at arm's length. But kind of like the Braves, they were dealing with a lot of injuries, especially to the rotation earlier in the year. So I would still lean Dodgers. But again, those 2 other teams, the Diamondbacks and Padres, they're just on a different level right now. I think they're certainly up there and can compete for the NL pennant this year.
I'll lean Dodgers as well, but they should be shaking in their boots.
Yeah,
literally.
Like, I mean, the Padres, they are on fire, but the Diamondbacks are too. Both of them could very easily find themselves in the NLCS, if not the World Series.
The Padres were in the NLCS 2 years ago, and the Diamondbacks were in the World Series last year. I mean, that's farther than the Dodgers have been since they won it in 2020, which, you know, we know how we feel about that. The AL East, the Orioles are 1.5 back behind the Yankees. The Yankees or the Orioles can't really seem how to separate from the others. So what do we think? Who's going to finish that one?
That's probably going to be the most entertaining division race. Yeah, toward the end of the year. Shout out to my brother who's an Orioles fan. God knows why. But, you know, he's having a fun year up there. But, yeah, neither team can really separate. They both – it seems like they're both always on a hot streak. And then you look at the standings, and it's like, wait, they're 5-5, and they're very, like, highlight culture teams, if that makes sense. Because, obviously, the Yankees have Judge and Soto, and then you got the Orioles who have this lineup of just stacked young studs, right? And you're constantly seeing highlights about them. And then you look at the standings, like, wait, they actually lost that game? So it's going to be a very entertaining finish in that division.
I think it comes back to who can handle injuries better. I mean, the Orioles are beat up. Like, their pitching staff has been ravaged by injuries this year. Now, the Yankees, they're pretty healthy, but Jazz Chisholm, he was balling for them once they acquired him.
What's his name?
Jazz Chisholm. I don't know.
It's Chisholm.
Names are hard.
It's more simple, though.
For listeners of this podcast, I will routinely butcher names.
I can't wait. This is going to be awesome. We've already got Napier and Chisholm.
Yeah, I routinely butcher names. But he was balling for the Yankees.
Oh, yeah.
Like, for as polarizing of a player as he was doing really well in, 16 games for them before he got hurt. He was a difference maker. Yeah. And the Yankees desperately needed that. So I think it really comes back to who can manage injuries better.
It's a good point. I do want to break some news to my Packers fan here. Packers just traded for Malik Willis.
Really?
Yeah.
Whoa.
For a 2025 seventh rounder.
Whoa. Earth shattering.
All right. Next we got the AL Central, where I feel like I can't even pick a team of my own to win this one. Guardians are up 2 games on the Royals and 2.5 on the Twins. What do we got?
Bobby Witt. 2 words.
Elite.
Bobby Witt.
You kind of look like Bobby Witt. If you
grew
out your hair,
yeah, a little bit, yeah.
You sort of have Bobby Witt vibes.
You got the same facial hair and everything.
I like it. No, 2 words for you. Bobby Witt. MVP candidate. I think he should win it. I don't think he will.
Ooh.
Judge, though.
We could debate that, but that's what Judge is doing, man. This is like what Bonds was basically
ridiculous.
Like, this is the modern day Bonds. Like, he's almost gonna catch Bobby in terms of Triple Crown if you really look at it. I mean, he's hitting like 333 or something.
Bobby goes on like a 0 for 20 streak.
Yeah.
Judge might catch him.
Yeah. He might. But 2 words for you. Bobby Witt. Royals win the division.
Wow.
I'm taking it.
I don't think the Royals are going to win the division, but I actually think they're the best team, if that makes sense. The Guardians are one of these teams, and I just saw the Cubs play them a couple weeks ago. They benefit. They're like the Brewers. They benefit from they capitalize on mistakes, which is a good thing, right? But that's about the only thing they capitalize on. Like, they don't really do much to help themselves, especially offensively. Again, when the name of the game is capitalizing, especially when you're at the professional level. But I think I keep saying Orioles. The Royals are a better team and will end up going further in the playoffs, depending on how that all shakes out.
The Royals are a team that they hit amazing with runners in scoring position. I think they improved the bullpen. I think it is the weakest out of the 3 teams, but I also think they have the best starters as well. Yeah. So I still honestly cannot pick a winner of this division. The Twins, man, I like it. Like a couple months ago, I was looking at their lineup, and I was like, their lineup is super deep, but Correa and Buxton and Royce Lewis can never get in the lineup on the same day. I think they played 17 games together all year, which is crazy. But like, if you could just keep those guys healthy, but now Joe Ryan just got hurt.
Yep.
Pablo Lopez has been pitching better recently, but like I said, I can't pick a winner for this one. Final division, AL West. The Mariners. Oh my God, I could talk so long about the Mariners.
Oh, man. So sad.
They are 4.5 back from Houston. Just fired their manager. Won a series against the Giants, but what do we think? Is it over? Which I'm assuming we did.
It's over. They are snowballing in the worst way. I actually got to go out to Seattle earlier this summer and got to see a Mariners game. Highlight of my summer, Cal Raleigh hit a grand slam to win the game against the White Sox, which got to talk about the White Sox. Anyway, talk about fired managers. But no, it's really, really sad to see how far the Mariners have fallen off. They didn't get any better after trading for Rosarena at the trade deadline. That's really, really sad to see.
I think that they're done. I mean, no one's scared of the Mariners. Even at the beginning of the year, they started hot, and we're like, okay, the Astros start. This is not going to last.
No.
Yeah.
Like,
it is kind of crazy, too, how the Astros just... You knew, like, we all knew it was coming, and yet it's still, like, freaking seriously.
Yeah.
Like, we were kind of kidding when we said, like, oh, here they come, but, yeah.
Here they are.
Yeah.
That's all you can say.
The Mariners were 10 games up. And now, like, at this point, I'm likening them to the West Coast Marlins almost. Except the Marlins, now they tore it down, basically. But the Mariners have even better pitching than the Marlins do in terms of starters and relievers. And they just can't. Even the guys they bring in, Mitch Garver, Jorge Polanco, Randy Rosarena. It's like whoever you bring in that stadium, they just cannot hit. Nobody can hit. They have to find a way to be able to manufacture runs. We'll see what happens firing a manager. I'll get into that later. Oh my gosh, with people firing managers and expecting them to do everything. But I mean, it's so disappointing. I cannot imagine what it's like. But I hear Mariners fans are like, they're not as heartbroken as you would think, because it's like it's kind of been their story the last several decades. I mean, so we'll see. All right, my next segment is I got kind of like a power rankings, but how I'm doing my power rankings is who I'm most confident in to win the World Series now.
I like that.
So I'm calling it Howard's headliners. Number 1, I do have the Dodgers as 1. Ooh. Now listen to me.
Ooh.
Now listen to me.
Okay.
I also subscribe to the fact that in the playoffs they're a different team for whatever reason that is. But I'm just looking at who they have, like Yamamoto, Glass now when they get back. They just got Mookie back several weeks ago. Just got Muncy and Edman back. Their lineup is looking deep again. The rotation is deep to whoever you want to ascribe that to. And I think, like you said, there's not necessarily a top dog in the league right now. So the Dodgers, I think, like I said, I'm not too confident in it, especially since I said I picked the Phillies earlier, but I have the Dodgers as my one right now.
Okay. I mean, I have no issue with that. I think they have the best record in the league now, too.
Something like that.
I think. I mean, that changes every single day, so.
Yeah. Next, I do have the Phillies. They're going through some offensive struggles, like the Braves creeping back into the division race. But, I mean, I know people be throwing around the aura word. In October.
Freaking hate that.
In October in Philadelphia, man, in a playoff game, it is unreal. And if that offense just gets clicking, which they haven't been doing recently, their starters are good. They have 4 starters you can go. Taijuan Walker probably won't touch the mound again in the playoffs. But the pen, I believe, has strong arms. And I think they will break through one of these years. I don't know which year it's going to be, but I hope it's this year.
I think that's interesting. You say Taijuan Walker won't touch the mound. You don't even see them using him in the bullpen at all.
They didn't use him last year.
No.
And he's been pitching terribly this year. What was that, Friday's game, he's terrible. I mean, it's come to a point where, like, they're pitching him just because of the money he is making. I mean, it's like, I think it's a 4-year contract. He's making over, like, 15 a year. So, I mean, it's tough when you have a situation like that. But, I mean, you got to put your pride to the side and your ego. Like, hey, I'm not pitching well. My team's trying to win. You got to accept that. Number 3, I have the Astros. They're just inevitable, man.
Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. I mean, their lineup, I'm looking at it now, like, a little top-heavy. Jordan didn't play the last several games, but, like, in the playoffs, they're just a different team. I don't know how they do it every year. But next, I have the Arizona Diamondbacks. It's number 4.
Ooh.
So hold on. Wait, that's... Okay, all right.
Arizona Diamondbacks. This is, like I said, 4th most confident to win the World Series if it started today.
How much are you putting last year's playoff run into this decision of ranking them 4?
I think teams who make it to the World Series, I think you are built to play in the World Series. I think it's more about how hot you get necessarily. But, like, when I'm looking at their team right now, they added at the deadline to their bullpen. They're getting starters back. The lineup is looking deep. They showed it last year how they can make it far in the playoffs, but I have another team that is pretty similar to them that is right behind them.
Who's that?
It's going to be the Padres at number 5. The
So,
thing about the Padres is their starters. I don't know what I'm going to get. Like, we're going to see Cease in a playoff environment. Musgrove, they just got Darvish back. But we'll see, man. Like, I'm taking the Snakes over the Padres. What you got?
I'm fine with that. I don't really have too many just disagreements with what you've said so far. That's similar to what I would have. And again, you're not doing a, like, who's won the most ranking. You're doing basically what you're doing, like a power rating almost. Mm-hmm. And so with that being said, yeah, I'm pretty with you so far.
Yeah, I'd agree. I mean, I'm on the Padres bandwagon hard. Mm-hmm. Like, I am.
Yeah.
I think the Phillies win the World Series. Mm-hmm. I think it's the Padres they beat in the NLCS.
Yeah.
Like, the Padres, they're stars. Like, they're guys, they don't have to play like stars because they just keep finding people to fill in that gap.
Jackson Merrill.
Jackson
It's so fun to watch.
Jerickson Profar. I mean,
Profar, yeah.
I don't know how they're doing it. Number 6, I have the New York Yankees. I think it's smart to mention that as good as Judge has been, he has not been the same player in the playoffs. No. Hopefully that's not the case because it's just good for baseball if he's doing what he's doing in the postseason. But I think with him and Soto, if they could just get other contributions in that lineup, it's going to be very hard to go into the Bronx and beat that team.
They haven't gotten that on a consistent basis really ever.
Yeah.
The rotation isn't nearly as strong.
Yeah.
Again, from a consistency standpoint, Garrett Cole unfortunately has taken kind of a step back this year. With I think he got injured at some point too.
He was hurt first part of the year.
So yeah, I don't know. It's they're definitely a team to keep an eye on, and maybe Judge and Soto are just that good to where they can carry them. Yeah. But I don't see it happening. I mean, you can just take the Shohei and Mike Trout example of just like if they were never really on the field enough. But also when they were, like, it's not like the team was winning that many more games. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, you really need your full 9 to be on it. And you saw that from the Rangers last year. Their full 9 was on it. Even after Garcia got hurt in the World Series, Travis Jankowski came in and got some clutch hits.
Yeah.
So, yeah, they definitely worry me from a postseason standpoint.
Next, I got the Baltimore Orioles. I was pretty high on the Orioles coming into the year, but like Ryan mentioned earlier, I mean, those injuries to your starters, Kyle Bradish, Tyler Wells, Grayson Rodriguez, they just traded for Zach Eflin. He got hurt. I mean, you cannot overcome that, and like you're kind of seeing the struggles from those younger offensive players kind of come to fruition now, where it's like the team isn't looking as strong. They traded for Sir Anthony Dominguez and Gregory Soto at the deadline. Dominguez has been up and down, but like I'm not super high on the pen either, to where like I want them to be good, but I'm not super confident in them anymore. Phone shut off. Next we got at number 8, the Minnesota Twins. Like I said, I'm super high on their lineup.
When fully healthy.
Cardinals just took 2 out of 3 with some luck in the 9th inning, but I mean they're a team that with Yohan Duran at the end, if they can get some healthy just health to their team. 9, I got the Kansas City Royals.
Shout out.
I'm very proud of what they built. I mean, when they added in the offseason, they added Michael Wacha and Seth Lugo. They were like teams, they'll be all right because they won 55 games last year or whatever it was, and now they're a team that you've already beat that by almost 20 games at this point in the season. I mean, That's pretty ridiculous. And like I said, with hitting and runners in scoring position, and just what Bobby Witt has done, man. I mean, it's ridiculous. In his third full season,
I believe so.
That's insane.
Yeah.
And at 10, I do have the Cleveland Guardians, not the Milwaukee Brewers.
I was going to ask about the Brewers because I had a feeling you weren't going to put them in your top 10. And I'm right there with you, honestly.
The thing about the Brewers is like they're almost like you said. They're and the Guardians are so similar, but like there's not necessarily one thing that stands out other than Cleveland's bullpen, which I guess is what I'm banking on. Milwaukee has a good bullpen as well, but Cleveland's is the best in the league, and also Cleveland. Something with their stadium, with how they're hitting more homers or whatever it is, and that they changed, like they took the seats out and
Oh, interesting.
yeah, they're hitting way more homers this year or something like that. But I'm not high on both of those teams right now, especially Cleveland. But I feel like if Cleveland, playing that ball that they've embraced for several years of kind of that small ball and just getting those timely hits, passing the baton, I think they're my number 10 team.
Yeah, I fully agree with you. I mean, the Brewers, yes, they play in the NL Central. The NL Central's a joke.
Yeah,
I mean,
we will talk about
it. It's not a joke.
It's not a joke, but like
it's not the NFC South.
No, it's not competitive like on a super high note though. I mean, the Brewers are the Cardinals over 500 now?
We're at 500.
At 500.
You're at 500.
The Cubs are 1 game below 500.
Cubs are 1 game below. Pirates are like 6 games below or something?
Yeah, they've lost a lot lately. Mm-hmm. And then the Reds are probably like 5 or 6 games below.
Yeah, and so I mean they're all right around 500 besides the Brewers.
Yeah.
It's competitive, but like I'm never going to believe a team that comes out of the NL Central. Like
no, and until they prove otherwise.
Exactly. There's no reason to buy on any of those teams. I'm a Cubs fan, and it's just been a torturous season. And it's the same for like every NL Central fan because the Brewers are just like, when is this going to stop happening? Like, when are we going to stop winning? It's just been insane that they've won as much as they have.
It is, and we can just get into the NL Central stuff now. Like, the Brewers are so freaking annoying because every time I watch them play against my team, whether it's the Cubs or when they just swept the Guardians recently, actually, but you don't watch them play and you're never like, this team shouldn't be this good.
Yeah.
But they've repeated the same Craig Counsell formula of just like strong pitching, and Willy Adames or William Contreras gets the one big hit they need per game, and that's it. That's all they need, and their bullpen is lights out. So it's just annoying to watch them beat all these mid NL Central teams and then have to go to the playoffs and try to convince the world that they're going to do something about it. No, they're just not. Every other team in this division is super, super flawed, and that's who they're playing a majority of their games against.
I think early 2010s, it was more the Cardinals division in terms of what they were doing, and then the Brewers took that, and now they've modified it to where they're playing a more modern style, whereas I look at the Cardinals and they like just kind of stuck in their ways a little bit, and then it caught up to them, and now they kind of got caught with their pants down, like, oh, how could this have happened? No, this was predictable. Also with a lot of the teams in this division, I mean, you could talk about their ownership and their spending.
Oh,
The
yeah.
Pirates, with the pitching they have, don't have bats. The Reds, you feel like they could have invested more into their team, especially the way their pitching came on. Hunter Green,
Oh yeah.
a lot of their
bullpen, too,
guys.
is just bad.
Yeah. I mean, even you guys could talk about the Cubs. I mean, in terms of investing rightly, I mean, you guys re-signed Cody Bellinger, and it was like some big joyous rob. But like, I was
Yeah.
like, the team didn't improve that much from last season's roster.
I hope that they don't do the same thing. There, by they, I mean Jed Hoyer doesn't do the same thing he did with our lineup heading into this season with our starting rotation next year, if that makes sense. Because we're getting a ridiculous output from our 3 big starters, which is Steele, Tyone, and Imanaga. But we still need another great arm to be a championship level team. And heading into this year, not only did we need to re-sign Bellinger, but we probably should have added somebody else too.
Yeah.
And the free agent market wasn't great. I mean, Cody Bellinger was one of the bigger bats in free agency, and that just goes to show you how weak the market was.
Yeah.
And I guess people took that as like adding something to the team. No, he was already there.
Right.
And we didn't make the playoffs last year. Now, he was an all-star level player last year, especially in the second half of the season. But anything less than what he did last year was going to be kind of a disappointment. And unfortunately, he experienced a lot of injuries. He's still wearing a brace around his finger. He's playing a little bit better lately, but the rest of the team they fell off completely. And the way that they've mixed and matched their bullpen and starting pitching injuries as well, it's just been chaos. And I don't want to spend too much time on it because it just makes me sad to think about.
I will say, Javier Assad has been a nice surprise. Like,
Yeah, he's been all right.
he's cooled down. Like, he was hotter at the beginning of the year, but I think he's fine as a 5th starter. But they have to find
Right.
somebody else to put in there because it's going to be the same old thing next year. And I guarantee, until Jed Hoyer, he's going to be in that job as long as he wants it. Because Theo Epstein would have been in that job as long as he wanted it until he left.
Right.
The Ricketts are never going to fire him.
No.
The Ricketts are also not going to spend like a Chicago team, which is incredibly disappointing. And honestly, within the next 3 years, the Cubs could be last place in this division. With how much better the Pirates are getting, the Brewers, unfortunately, they're not changing. They're not going to get any better, but I don't think they get any worse.
No.
Yeah.
I agree with you there. And it's one of those things where you just have to hope and pray that this whole site, basically they're like the Bulls now. The Bulls have gotten to a spot. Well, we're not talking NBA, but the Bulls have gotten to a spot where they're competitive enough every year to bring the fans in. And really that's all the owners care about. That's all people care about is can you get butts and seats. And the Cubs are good enough right now to where you're going to get people thinking about, oh, maybe, but you know they're not going to. But the casuals out there, even more casual than we would be about certain sports, like they don't care. They're just going to show up and enjoy a nice day at Wrigley and sit back, have a beer and everything. And it just sucks for people who care, like myself and like Grieser, Cubs fans who just really want the team to win and are kind of sick of this mid stage that it seems like we're heading into right now.
What you just described is exactly what it's like for Cardinals fans, except they're not showing up anymore. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah. That place was so empty. Who did you guys just play at home recently? Before the Twins series.
Brewers.
Yeah, the Brewers.
Yeah.
That's an NL Central game, and that stadium was empty.
Yeah.
Wasn't there? It was like the first game under 30,000 people in how many years?
The way they announce it is that sold tickets.
Yeah.
There was not 30,000 people.
Sure.
They over-report more than any team I've ever seen.
Yeah, it was something like
it's ridiculous.
it was probably like 14,000, something like that.
Oh,
I think one of the B reporters said.
Yeah.
I mean, like they literally just, like I said earlier, they got stuck in a system where like, oh, I see what's going to happen. This division is weak. We could just win the division, stay competitive in terms of the division because you played the division even more those years, but now you're playing a universal schedule, and now it caught up to them, and now they're like, oh, now what do we do? So this is why, like, I'm obviously hoping the team wins every night, but if they lose, I'm not taking it as hard as because I want there to be change. I think Mozeliak should be gone after this year. Hopefully we keep losing so he can be.
Right.
And also, like, I'm not a manager person necessarily, but like just the whole coaching staff in general, the player development, because there's been a lot of teams. I mean, there's been a lot of players that were to come through and you're like, he's gonna be a guy, and they don't develop, and they go somewhere else and they do develop. So, I mean, I'm hoping for just utter change. So, hopefully they start losing. They had a tough schedule, but, I mean, they took 2 from the Brewers, took 2 from the Twins. San Diego comes in for the Mike Shields series, which I'll get into more in our dog treats. But
yeah. So I think that's actually a good place to transition into our final segment of the show. It was called the What'd You Learn segment, but I've modified it a little bit. I've dogified it a little, if you will. It's going to be called Dog Treats, and it's basically where we can just talk about anything at all, whether it's sports related, whether it's not sports related, whether it's talking about Carbondale's potholes, anything around of that nature we're going to talk about. And since you were talking about managing, you've already referred to it a few times, why don't you just continue that thought for today's dog treat? Lead us off, Howard.
I've been wanting to get this off my chest for a little minute. I just don't understand the caught upness with major league managers. I feel like it's such a different job than any other head coaching or managerial spot, because you're not necessarily calling plays or anything like that, but you're basically like a leader. Like comparing it to the NFL, when the Eagles made it to the Super Bowl several years ago, Nick Sirianni's this great coach, but he wasn't calling plays, and he was necessarily as this leader guy. And then a year later, they start losing, and then they blame him again. But what was it really? I guess you could put it on his coaching hires. I would absolve some of that blame with the coaching and how he's hiring hitting coaches necessarily, or pitching coaches and what he's doing. But in the grand scheme of things, I don't believe managers have that much of an effect on the outcome of a team. I believe it's much more on the roster more than any other sport. Like I said, you can't call plays. There's no defenses you run. You can prepare them with hitting coaches and pitching coaches and stuff like that. But I believe in more than any other sport, man, it's the players on the roster more than anything. And I think when we just blame managers, like I go on to Twitter under managers' post game conferences, and they're like, "Oh, what? They're the same old thing he's saying again." It's like, what do you want him to say? You want him to? Oh no, my team sucks, man. What do you want me to do? I mean, he's didn't get the effort out there. I mean, it's a really tough job, and I believe it's scapegoatish more than anything in a lot of cases. But like I said, I mean, it's pretty much bullpen, which is how good is your bullpen in terms of bullpen managing. Also lineup construction, which I feel is a little overblown, but also that probably has more of an effect, I guess, in terms of continuity day to day. But what do you guys think on my manager take? You guys brought in Craig Counsell, and you have a pretty similar year, even though he was regarded, and look what the Brewers are doing. So
yeah, I mean, I'm not going to say managers don't make an impact. I think they're more of a. It almost seems like now they're more of a culture.
Yeah.
Setter than even like an in-game manager. Now, there are certain things, and I said the same thing when David Ross was the manager, and I'm holding Craig Counsell to the same standard. There are a lot of things that happen during the game that I feel like even the most elementary level baseball knowledge people would understand. And this, I mean, the Hector Neris situation that we just dealt with in Chicago. And it's why I've even, like, I have ripped on Ryan Helsley, and you guys know that better than most people do. But, like, it's to make a point, and I would say the exact same thing about Neris. And I was telling Howard this last week, actually. I think it was against Toronto. It was a Friday game. He blew a save. That was the first time he had blown a save in 2 months. Does that mean he was a good pitcher for those 2 months? No, he was terrible. He's never gotten back to being good. He's not even close to what he was when he was in Houston. And so, but Craig Counsell kept throwing him out there. And I'm like, Craig, I know he's not blowing saves anymore, but he's also not getting the job done either. Like, just because you get out of an inning doesn't mean you did good. Doesn't mean you got the job done that inning. A closer, if you consider yourself to be a contending team, a closer needs to be something that is shut down. Like Yohan Duran you were talking about earlier. Shut down.
Emmanuel Clase.
And so I guess that's the thing with managers. It's like Clase, perfect. Where there's sometimes they're just elementary level things that I think as fans it's okay. We're justified in complaining about them because of how elementary level they are, and obviously we don't have access to the stats they have. We don't see these pitchers take their bullpens every single day. But man, it's just hard. It's just hard sometimes.
I do want to say before Ryan goes, the egregious stuff, I do agree. It's when it's obvious to the fans. I mean, and fans think everything's obvious, but like, for example, we're playing the Padres tonight. Mike Shields, their manager. He's getting a lot of credit for what's going on. But like you said, a lot of breakout players. Good roster. They added at the deadline and before the deadline. 3 years ago, in the 2021 wildcard game, Cardinals are playing the Dodgers. one game wild card system still, 1-1 in the bottom of the ninth. Throughout that season, Alex Reyes was our closer. Had a long consecutive save streak, but every single save it was very like a lot of base runners, a lot of traffic, and then he eventually started blowing those games, and he got moved out of the closer role, and then he blew the game against the Dodgers, gave up a 2-run homer to Chris Taylor in the bottom of the ninth. And that move by Mike Schilt was more egregious. From the outside looking in, was the more egregious thing than anything that Ali Marmol has ever done. And people and I think a lot of the hate that Marmol gets is because they fired Schilt without a necessarily good reason, or they didn't tell the public a good reason. But like I said, the egregious stuff I get, but the most of like you said, Jay Kruse, it's the culture setting, it's how you I guess influence those guys in terms of the motivation, the energy that you bring in every day.
So to me, baseball, and part of the reason I love baseball is the stats.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's so many stats that you can
great.
just get into, and I don't understand half of them. But the ones that I do understand, I love them. Now to me, you can sit on your couch, you can be a manager all day, but there's just something about a good manager. Like look at Bruce Bochy. He's been a manager for God, how many years? I mean, decades in the MLB. Still has a job.
Yeah.
And he's not like a Tony La Russa kind of guy who should not have had a job with the White Sox. That's a whole nother story.
Yeah.
But, like, there's just something about a good manager, and I don't care about the rise of analytics. Like, good managers just have something about them. Like, it's not only their culture. It's not only how they can say, all right, you're going out to hit. They just have the gut feeling they can lead this team and that they can just make the decision that's going to win the game. Like, there are not many of those out there. And heck, even Bochy, he's been fired from multiple places. Like, I think baseball managers also have a bit of a shelf life. Like, in each stop, I don't think that guys really last longer than, 7, 8 years? Even the best ones. They just don't last that long. Because baseball, it's so easy to find another guy. And it's so easy to blame someone. Like, you're talking about Howard and be like, grass is going to be greener somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
Is it? 'Cause, I mean, finding one that's truly a leader of men and that can make a difference, win games. The Cubs are learning. Craig Counsell may not be that kind of guy. Maybe he is, and this is just a bad year. But, they paid him a heck of a lot of money to find out.
Yeah.
Sure doesn't look like it right now.
Yeah, we'll definitely have to see how that develops. And, I mean, like you said, baseball earlier, the stats aspect of it. I can go on Baseball Savant all day and just look at dudes like profile pages. And all their, I don't even know what half the stuff means, but just it's a very analytics driven sport. But with a guy like Bruce Bochy, who just came back and won a World Series last year in his first year as the Rangers manager, there is something to it, but it's not, you can't quantify an impact a manager has really, other than wins and losses. So. Dog treat number 2. I'll go ahead and go if that's okay with you, Ryan.
Go for it.
Because this is something I've talked about on this podcast before, but I want to reiterate it as we get into football season. If you want to be smarter when you predict, and we've never promoted gambling on this podcast, we never will, but I'm just saying, if you want to be a smarter fan and understand the game more and go in with realistic expectations, you need to start familiarizing yourself with spreads and over-unders, and I'll tell you why. In the college football segment, there were 2 games, right? We had Miami at Florida. Miami's ranked 19th. Florida's unranked. But that's only a 2-point spread. So when they predict Florida to win that game, that's not crazy, because the people who are smarter than us and have more information than us agree with that sentiment, right? And then you go to the Notre Dame A&M game. A&M's 13 spots lower than Notre Dame, but they're favored in the game. So I would just tell people, listen, especially when NFL comes around. Oh gosh, when NFL comes around. Spreads and over-unders are your best insight to what kind of game you're going to get. And the lines are so, the books are so good now at putting out their lines. They're basically telling you what's going to happen in the game.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you want to be smart, if you want to sound smart around your people, right? Let's say, who's the first Thursday night game? It's Ravens-Chiefs, right?
Can't wait.
And people are throwing out their score predictions, and they're saying, these 2 high-powered offenses, we're going to go 42-31, and you come out of nowhere. Let's say the over-under is 52, right? So you come out and say 28-24, and then the people are like, what do you mean? You don't think it's going to be a high-scoring game? No, I just what I think it's going to be. And you don't have to tell them why you think that. But at the end of the night, you're going to end up looking smarter. And, of course, maybe it will end up being 42-31. But who cares? The point is, these things are real. And it's kind of scary how accurate they are. So I don't know how much you guys pay attention to that kind of thing. But it's definitely impacted the way that I watch sports recently.
That's a good point, Jay Kruse, because I don't bet on sports, but I will see it, and it'll be super close to what the lines and what a lot of the stuff is, and it's really interesting how Vegas seems to know everything, I guess, in that aspect. But just hopefully you guys look into those things and you take into account those lines and stuff, because like you said, you look smarter, and everybody wants to look smarter when you're talking sports.
Yeah, I mean, you're for sure going to see that, and I think that Vegas, the lines, the odds are only going to get better as more people. We do not promote gambling on this podcast, but as more people do start gambling, the sports books only have to get better, because if they don't, they're going to lose money. So
and even college sports, it's amazing how good they are, because we still don't have mandatory injury reports in college, which I think is coming soon. Yeah. We're probably going to be having that sooner than later, but it just goes to show how crazy they can be with this kind of thing. So that's all I would say to the people, and this isn't really this is not advice. It's more or less, well, it's advice if you want to sound smarter, but I'm not telling you to go out and start betting everything, but I'm just saying, it's in terms of your expectations for your season. Let's say you're a Carolina Panthers fan and you will go watch practice and you're like, hey, we look pretty good this year. And then you look at the line and it's minus 12 and there's a reason why you're 12-point underdogs, bro. Just calm down. Calm down. So, yeah, it's a tool, I would say, that I've used over the years, and I don't know, it just helps me be a smarter fan. This is kind of a very light topic here. But, yeah, that's the first thing that pops into my head. So, Ryan Grieser, take us away. Final dog treat of the week before we wrap things up.
What you got, Ryan?
All right, so my dog treat, I'm going a little bit different direction. It's actually not going to be sports related at all.
Okay.
Sure, pretty much anybody anymore in the world's going to know who Post Malone is and how much music he's made just in his career, which just the sheer amount of it is impressive.
Fun fact, he's the number 5 most listened to artist on Spotify.
Of all time?
Of all time.
Wow.
There you go. That's a perfect stat to encapsulate
82 million monthly listeners or something, which is just ridiculous.
That's insane.
And that's on one app, too.
Mm-hmm. That's one app.
Yeah.
But then his new album, F1 Trillion, I am very impressed by his... I wouldn't even call it a transition to country, because I think he can do whatever style he wants, honestly. But just how surprisingly good it was. I admittedly had low expectations for that. I was like, okay, Post Malone, country album, it'll be fine. But I'm not excited. Gave it a listen. I was actually very impressed. And then if you like songs that have features with people, I mean, almost every single one on that album has some big name in country music. Yeah. It's very impressive how he managed to pull it all together and make it as good as it was. Yeah. So give it a listen if you haven't already.
I think the best artists are the ones who are versatile. So, I mean,
facts.
Going into a genre like country, where I think the public perception of country as a genre is not great, for him to be able to transition that and accept that and embrace that, like you said, grabbing big artists from that genre, it's pretty impressive, and I think it's important for the growth of country, even though I'm not a country listener whatsoever.
Really?
No, sir.
No surprise that the guy from Fisher, Illinois is in. I really love the album too. It actually, believe it or not, and I just started listening to country really in the last couple of years, but I'm not a country fan. There's just certain songs that I like, and I'll add to my playlist or whatever. Mm-hmm. But I was tallying it up last week. That album broke my personal record for most songs I've added to a playlist off of one album.
Really?
Not even joking. I really don't know what it is. Quick verbal meme, if you'd allow me. It's like the Drake Hotline Bling meme where he goes no? Okay, so this is how, right? Stay with me now. Post Malone, country music. Post Malone, country music. See what I'm saying?
I see you.
For whatever reason, it works. And you listen to the album, and it's it doesn't sound like real country, but it also doesn't sound like it's obviously Post Malone, if that makes sense.
Sure.
And also, and you talk about the versatility, thinking about the stuff he did when he was first getting famous, and now he's making a country. What? But he made it work. He made it work, and them concerts when that tour starts, holy crap, that's gonna be insane.
Yeah.
So, I also didn't realize just how big he was too. It kind of just hit me when when I saw that stat that he was the number 5 most listened to all time, like, gosh, dang, he's huge.
How long is the album?
It's probably a little over an hour. I think there's like 14 songs on it, something like that.
There's 14, and then he added like an extra 9 or 10 solo tracks on a deluxe version as well. There's a lot of good ones. Have you listened to that?
I'm not sure I've
If you
heard the
haven't,
deluxe yet.
Make sure you do.
I will.
And with that being said, folks, talking about Post Malone, I did not see us ending the pod talking about Post Malone country music. But if you are listening to this podcast on Spotify, please be sure to check out the YouTube channel. Quick programming announcement. We're going to make a new YouTube channel. It'll just be Inside Sports with a DE capitalized, of course. But we are going to put out this first episode on the Daily Egyptians YouTube channel as well, just to let everybody know, hey, we're going to be on a new YouTube channel. The Spotify will stay the same. All the social medias will stay the same. On Instagram at Inside Sports 22. For Howard Woodard, for Ryan Grieser, this is Jordan Kruse. We will see you next week. Go Dogs.